has been solved, every inequality has been fixed. That's the idea behind post-identity. It doesn't matter anymore. I would argue otherwise, and one of the reasons why I was asking you to articulate why you choose the identity that you choose is that it is about using it as a political mechanism against oppression and to enfranchise oneself. And so if we talk about identity as only some flavor that we choose or some other thing that someone puts on us, it actually disempowers what it actually does, which is to make things happen, make things change, usually for the better. So in my mind, identity still matters, and it matters because there isn't universal equality. So we still need to mobilize these differences to try to get some equality. There's a really interesting thing that you were also hinting at back there, and that you Lauren brought up when you were talking about, do I want to live in a country where, or what kind of country will it be when there's a black man for president, or becomes president, and would I want to even be a black president that Baldwin suggests? I've had some kind of uneasiness with the recent passage of the marriage laws in New York. Not because I don't think that there should be equality for all people who want to get married, but it leaves out a whole group of people who do not want to get married because it's a really problematic institution that's based on some very problematic principles. And so if we don't then think through what marriage actually means, then we just kind of take on the problematic institution and continue to perpetuate its problems.
That's part of what I was trying to get at earlier, is that if we don't interrogate the choices that we're making, we are more likely to replicate the very structures that some of us think we're trying to undermine. And so this rush to marriage, and I too agree 100% that people should have the ability to marry or not marry, but what it skirts around is what it means to be married. What are all of the political implications of that? And for me, with this idea of post-identity, at this moment in 2011, at the age of 55, as a black queer woman, I feel compelled and find great joy in identifying in those ways because I think that they are insurgent choices. I think by naming myself that way, I get to push some boundaries open rather than not take on those identities and, as I said before, allow then this sort of uninvestigated idea about what is good or what is healthy. So I'm excited by the conversation because I think it is allowing us to pry open. And as I look out at some of the faces, some of you are listening really so intently. And there's so few spaces that we have to have these kinds of conversations, particularly in a so-called mixed race group. And I get excited because it becomes a place where each of our identities then can push against various restrictions, and that then becomes another set of possibilities. It's not hegemonic. It is something that allows for something we haven't imagined yet. So not post-racial or even but something we haven't even imagined as we force ourselves to have open, honest, respectful conversation around these issues.
I think that there's an argument around the notion of post-race that may be valid, and it's all about this word that's been circulating around definition. I think Maganthrie alluded to. Since 1994, in South Africa, the notion of post-race, rainbow nation, has been a marketing tool that has been used to varying degrees of, even post-identity is a kind of marketing tool that's been in place. And the interesting thing is that in some respects, we are post-racial in South Africa. But it's all about the definition. Because what it has meant to become a post-racial society has meant that the acceptance of particular benchmarks, which in our case are all about white supremacist notions of what's good and what's bad, what's relevant and what isn't. And even the expropriation of things because the country belongs to all who live in it. And we are post-racial and post-like. So even notions around African, the traditional cosmology and notions of being are a free-for-all, or have been since '94, for anybody who's got the marketing sus to take control of it. So, I mean, for me, we've been in this process of post-race from this time, and even as said earlier by Maganthrie, even for us to have the audacity that we define ourselves as black filmmakers, as black activists, and by the rule of law at present, it would mean that if we were to apply for funding, let's say from the state, from government, we would be denied in the interest of post-race. If our stories, the kind of stories, the hundreds or thousands of years of stories that we want to tell are problematic, because the benchmark or the definition in our post-racial society means that they're not universal. And universal by definition is white. So the thing about, I mean, it's quite interesting. I agree, that maybe I'm not going to speak about whether you're post-racial in America or not. I know that we're well on our way in South Africa.